The boss made the employee sleep on the floor, but a millionaire saw and changed it. Brian Taylor didn't know what else to do to keep his job. At 28, he was the sole provider for his sick mother and 3 younger siblings. "Brian?" Richard Peterson's harsh voice echoed through the warehouse. "Did you fall asleep on the job again?" The young man quickly got up from the cold floor where he had dozed off for a few minutes. His back ached terribly after months of sleeping on that icy warehouse floor. Richard, the manager of the food distribution company where Brian had worked for 2 years, approached with his face red with anger. "I'm sorry, Mr. Peterson, it's just that last night I worked until 3 a.m. organizing the inventory and—" "I don't want excuses." Richard put his hands on his hips. "You're paid to work, not to sleep." Brian lowered his head. What Richard didn't know was that the young man lived on the other side of town in Newark. With the minimum wage he earned, he couldn't afford round-trip transportation every day and still help at home. So, for the past 6 months, he had been secretly sleeping in the company's warehouse. "Mr. Peterson, please," Brian tried to explain. "Shut up, do you think I'm stupid?" "I know very well you've been sleeping here in the warehouse." Brian's heart raced. He'd been found out. I can explain." "No need." Richard pointed his finger sharply. "Either you accept my terms, or you're out on the street tomorrow." "What terms?" Brian swallowed hard. Richard smirked maliciously. "Simple, you can keep sleeping here, but it'll be on my terms. No more hiding in corners. You'll sleep right here in the middle of the warehouse, on the floor, where I can see you. And every morning before the other employees arrive, you clean everything up and disappear from my sight." Brian felt a lump in his throat. The humiliation was immense, but the thought of his bedridden mother and his siblings struggling was worse. "I accept," he murmured. "Great. And one more thing. You'll work overtime without pay. Consider it rent for using my floor." And so began Brian's ordeal. Every night after his shift, he would lay out a piece of cardboard on the cold warehouse floor and try to sleep. Richard made a point of walking by before leaving, deliberately stepping close to the young man's head. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. "Comfortable there, Brian?" the manager taunted. "Don't forget to wake up early to clean everything." The days turned into weeks of suffering. Brian barely slept on the hard floor, waking up multiple times during the night with body aches. During the day, he worked exhausted, carrying heavy boxes and organizing merchandise. Jennifer, one of the longest-serving employees, noticed her colleague's pitiful state. "Brian, you're getting thinner and more worn out every day. What's going on?" "It's nothing, Jennifer. Just tired." He avoided her gaze. Jennifer wasn't convinced, but Brian was afraid to tell the truth. Richard had made it clear that if he complained to anyone, he'd be fired on the spot. One particularly cold January morning, Brian woke up shivering on the warehouse floor. His limbs were numb and he could barely stand. It took several minutes to regain movement and start cleaning before the other employees arrived. As he swept, tears streamed down his face. He remembered his father, who had left when Brian was just 15, leaving the family helpless. He had promised him he'd take care of his mother and siblings, but at what cost? "Dad, forgive me," he whispered. "I'm trying, but it's so hard." At that moment, the warehouse door opened. Brian froze. It was only 6 in the morning. No one was supposed to arrive before 7. "Who's there?" a deep voice echoed. Brian turned and found himself facing an elegant man in an impeccable suit. He appeared to be around 40 with dark hair, slightly graying at the temples. "Excuse me, sir, I'm Brian, an employee here. I was just cleaning." The man took in the scene. The cardboard on the floor, the old blanket, Brian's belongings in the corner. "Did you sleep here?" he asked, stepping closer. Brian lowered his head, ashamed. "It's complicated, sir. My name is William Parker. I'm the new investor in this company. I came to see the facilities early, but I didn't expect to find this." Brian's blood ran cold. An investor in the company. Richard would surely fire him now. "Please, Mr. William, I can explain." "Easy, son. Sit down." William pulled up a chair. "Tell me what's going on." "Something in." William's calm voice and understanding gaze made Brian break down. Through tears, he shared his entire situation: his sick mother, the siblings who depended on him, the lack of money for transportation, and above all, the humiliating conditions Richard had imposed. William listened intently, his expression growing increasingly serious. Richard knows about this and allows it? No, worse, he demands you sleep on the floor? Brian nodded, afraid he'd said too much. This is unacceptable. William stood up. Absolutely unacceptable. Please, don't tell him I said anything. I need this job. William placed a hand on the young man's shoulder. Don't worry, Brian, I'll handle this, but I need you to trust me. Before Brian could respond, the door opened again. Richard hurried in, surprised to see William there. Mr. William, what a surprise. I didn't expect you so early. Well, Richard, I wanted to get to know the company I've invested in better, and look what I found. Richard glanced at Brian, his face turning red. This lazy bum, I told him not to. Lazy bum? William interrupted. From what I understand, this young man works harder than anyone here. He puts in overtime without pay and is subjected to inhumane conditions. You don't understand, Richard tried to explain. This kid is a freeloader. He wants to live in the warehouse for free. And you, as the manager, instead of finding a dignified solution, chose to humiliate him, make him sleep on the floor like an animal? Richard swallowed hard. I was just maintaining order. Order? Is that what you call order? William was visibly angry. I want you in my office in an hour. We have a lot to discuss. He turned to Brian. Son, gather your things. You won't be sleeping here anymore. But Mr. William, I have nowhere to go, and I told you to trust me. Come on. Brian, still dazed, collected his few belongings as Richard stormed out. William waited patiently. Do you have family? William asked as they walked. Yes, sir. My mother and 3 siblings. And your father? He left when I was 15. Brian looked down. William stopped walking and studied the young man. You know, Brian, I lost my father young too. I know the weight of carrying a family on your shoulders at such a young age. They continued to the parking lot, where William opened the door to a luxurious car. Get in, let's have coffee and talk properly. During the ride, Brian watched the city wake up. How long had it been since he'd seen the sunrise from a comfortable car? They stopped at an elegant bakery downtown. William ordered a full breakfast for both. Brian hesitated. Eat, son. From the looks of it, you need a proper meal, as... They ate. William asked many questions about Brian's family, his education, his dreams. He learned the young man had completed 2 years of business administration, but had to drop out when his mother fell ill. Would you like to go back to school? It's my biggest dream, Mr. William, but with things as they are, what if I told you I could help? Brian nearly choked on his coffee. What do you mean? Look, Brian, I built my empire from scratch. I know potential when I see it. You've got grit, determination, and even in the worst conditions, you've kept your dignity. I don't understand. I'm offering you an opportunity. But first, I need to handle the situation at the company. Richard can't keep treating employees this way. William picked up the phone and made a quick call. Brian only caught fragments of the conversation, but could tell it was with someone important. Done, William said, hanging up. I've scheduled a meeting soon, but before that I want you to show me where you live. Brian felt embarrassed. The modest home in Newark was far from presentable. Mr. William, you don't have to. I insist. I want to meet your family. The drive to Newark was silent. Brian guided the way, growing more anxious by the minute. What would his mother say when she saw this wealthy man in their humble home? The house stood at the end of an unpaved street. It was small, just 3 rooms, with peeling paint and a patched roof. Brian flushed. This is it, Mr. William. Let's go. When he knocked, the door was answered by Jessica, his 16-year-old sister. Brian, you're back. Mom got sick again last night and... She stopped when she saw William. Jess, here's Mr. William. He's a friend. Can we come in? The house was in disarray. His 2 younger brothers, Michael, 12, and Daniel, 10, were in the small living room trying to do homework on a broken table. In the only bedroom, Brian's mother, Mrs. Barbara, lay pale and weak. Mom, I brought someone to meet you, Mrs. Barbara tried to sit up, but William gently stopped her. Please, Mom, don't get up. I'm the one who should apologize for dropping in unannounced." For the next hour, William spoke with the whole family. He learned Mrs. Barbara suffered from chronic kidney disease and needed dialysis 3 times a week, but often missed treatments because she couldn't afford transportation. Brian's brothers were bright students, but lacked school supplies and often went to school hungry. "Mrs. Barbara, your son is a fighter," William said, "but no one should carry so much weight alone." "I always tell him to live his own life," Mrs. Barbara said, tears in her eyes, "but he insists on taking care of us." "And that's exactly why I'm going to help you," William stood up. "Brian, I need to get back for the meeting, but I want you to know, starting today, things will change." "Mr. William, I can't accept charity." "It's not charity, son, it's an investment. In you, in your family, in the future. We'll talk more tomorrow. For now," he took out some bills from his wallet. "Buy food and medicine. Get an advance." Brian tried to refuse, but William was firm. "Take it, and be at the company tomorrow at 8. Not the warehouse, the executive office." After William left, the family sat in silence, processing what had just happened. "Son, who is that man?" Mrs. Barbara asked. "I'm not sure, Mom, but something tells me our lives are about to change." The next day, Brian arrived at the company right on time. The receptionist, who had never spoken to him before, greeted him with extreme courtesy. "Mr. Brian, Mr. William is expecting you. Right this way, please." In the meeting room, along with William, were several other executives. Richard was there too, visibly uncomfortable. "Brian, have a seat," William said. "Gentlemen, this is the employee I told you about." "Brian, we've just made some important decisions about the company," one of the executives spoke up. "After reviewing the situation, we've decided to implement significant changes. First, Richard has been demoted. We do not tolerate abuse of power in our companies." Richard hung his head, defeated. "Second," the executive continued, "we've created an employee assistance program, including transportation and housing aid for special cases. And third," William interrupted, "you, Brian, are being promoted. You'll start as an administrative assistant with a matching salary, and the company will cover your education so you can finish college." Brian couldn't believe it. I don't know what to say." "Say you accept," William smiled. "But there's more. The company has rented a small apartment closer to here for you and your family. It's modest but decent, and your mother will have full medical coverage under the company's health plan." Tears streamed freely down Brian's face. "Why are you doing this for me?" William stood up and approached the young man. "Because 30 years ago I was in your situation, sleeping in storage rooms, being humiliated, supporting my family alone. A man gave me a chance and changed my life. Today, I'm paying it forward." The following months brought intense changes. Brian threw himself into his studies and new job with total dedication. The family moved into the apartment, modest but comfortable. Mrs. Barbara began proper treatment, and her health improved considerably. Brian's siblings could focus on school without worry, but not everything was perfect. Richard, resentful over his demotion, tried to sabotage Brian in every way possible. "Don't think this will last long, kid," he whispered whenever he passed by. "William will get tired of you and then you'll see." Brian ignored the taunts, focused on proving his worth, but Richard didn't give up. He started spreading rumors that Brian had lied about his situation to take advantage of William's kindness. Jennifer, the co-worker who had always been kind to Brian, warned him, "Be careful. Richard is trying to convince other employees you're a freeloader." "Let him talk, Jennifer. My work will show who I am." But things got worse when Richard discovered Brian had an old, small debt to a loan shark in his old neighborhood. It was from when his mother had been very sick, and he'd needed urgent money for medicine. "Mr. Parker," Richard said in a meeting, "I think you should know your protege owes money to loan sharks. What kind of person gets involved with those people?" William looked at Brian, who paled. "Is this true, Brian?" "Yes, Mr. Parker, but I can explain." "See?" Richard smirked. "And there's more. I found out he was arrested once." Brian felt the ground drop beneath him. It was true. At 18, he'd been detained in a case of mistaken identity during a police raid. He was released the same day, but the record remained. "Brian, I need you to be completely honest with me, William said seriously. What else haven't you told me? Brian took a deep breath and told him everything. The debt taken in desperation, the wrongful arrest, even the time he'd taken expired food from a supermarket dumpster to feed his siblings. The room was tense with silence. Richard smiled, thinking he'd succeeded. Gentlemen, could you give us a moment? William asked. Richard, Brian, stay. When they were alone, William stood. Richard, you've deeply disappointed me. Using someone's difficult past to try to destroy them is the lowest thing I've ever seen. But Mr. Parker, I was just protecting the company. No, you were trying to get revenge. Brian, how much do you owe the loan shark? $3,000, Mr. Parker. I've been paying it off little by little. Not anymore. The company will settle this debt. Consider it an interest-free loan we'll deduct slowly from your salary. But Mr. Parker, Richard protested, this sets a dangerous precedent. The dangerous precedent is having people like you in this company, Richard, who exploit others' suffering. You're fired. What? You can't do this. I've worked here for 15 years, and in 15 years you never learned compassion. Pack your things. You have 1 hour to leave the company. Richard stormed out, threatening to sue. William turned to Brian. Son, we all have a past. What matters is what we do with our future. Keep proving your worth. Richard's firing caused a stir in the company. Some employees supported the decision, while others thought William was playing favorites with Brian. He's only here because William feels sorry for him, Brian overheard someone say in the restroom. The words stung, but he kept working hard. In his night classes, he was the most dedicated student. At home, he helped his siblings with their studies. 6 months later, another twist. An audit revealed Richard had been embezzling money for years. The firing, which had seemed unfair to some, turned out to be providential. Brian, William said in a meeting, if it weren't for you, we'd never have uncovered Richard's theft. He kept everyone too intimidated to speak up. From that moment on, Brian's standing in the company improved. His colleagues began to genuinely respect him, but new challenges arose. Despite treatment, Mrs. Barbara took a sudden turn for the worse. Doctors recommended a kidney transplant, but the waiting list was long. Don't worry about me, she told her children. I've lived long enough to see you all on the right path. Don't talk like that, Mom, Brian said, holding her hand. You'll get better. William, aware of the situation, used his connections to try to speed things up. But even with all his influence, there were limits. Brian, I arranged for your mother to be evaluated at a private hospital. The chances of finding a compatible donor are higher. Mr. William, you've already done so much, and I'll do more if needed. Family is sacred, son. Never forget that. During the months of waiting, Brian juggled work, studies, and caring for his mother. Jessica, his sister, helped too, but she was in her senior year of high school and dreamed of college. Brian, I can get a job too, she offered, to help with expenses. Absolutely not, you're going to school. It's bad enough I had to drop out, you won't repeat my mistake. It wasn't a mistake, bro, it was love. A year had passed since that day in the warehouse. Brian was promoted again, now in a supervisory role. He was finishing his business, to a degree with top grades. One Saturday morning, the phone rang. It was the hospital. Mr. Brian, we found a compatible donor for your mother. You need to come immediately. The rush was frantic. William, informed of the situation, sent his car and driver to help. The surgery was a success, but recovery would be long. Brian spent nights at the hospital, worked days, and studied in between. You'll make yourself sick like this, warned Jennifer, who had become a close friend. I have to handle it all, Jennifer. My family depends on me. Your family needs you healthy, accept help when it's offered. And help was plentiful. William had set up an emergency fund for employees. Colleagues took turns visiting Mrs. Barbara. The solidarity Richard had stifled for years finally flourished, but Richard hadn't given up on revenge. He sued the company for wrongful termination and spread lies about William and Brian wherever he went. I heard Richard is trying to ruin you, Brian told William one day. Let him try. The truth always wins. And it did. Richard's lawsuit was dismissed when evidence of his embezzlement came to light. He ended up facing criminal charges and had to repay the stolen money. 2 years passed. Brian graduated with honors in business administration. On graduation day, the whole family was there, including Mrs. Barbara, fully recovered. "Dad would be so proud," she whispered during the ceremony. William was also there, clapping like a proud father. "Congratulations, son, but this is just the beginning." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us who are just starting out. Now, back to the story. And it truly was just the beginning. William offered Brian the management of a new branch the company would open. "That's a lot of responsibility, Mr. William. I'm not sure I'm ready." No one is ever completely ready. But you have something that can't be taught: character. The rest you learn. Brian accepted the challenge. He moved his family to a better neighborhood, enrolled his siblings in good schools, and made sure his mother had all the comfort she deserved. But he didn't forget his roots. He implemented inclusive hiring policies at the new branch, giving opportunities to young people from underprivileged communities. He created a training program for those with no experience. Jennifer was transferred to work with him, now as his assistant. "Remember when you used to sleep in the warehouse?" she said one day. "How could I forget? Those were the worst months of my life. But look how far you've come. It's inspiring, Brian. I only got here because someone believed in me. Now it's my turn to believe in others." And that's what he did. Jason, a 19-year-old, was hired as a warehouse assistant. Brian noticed he always arrived too early and left too late. "Jason, can I talk to you?" The young man got nervous, thinking he'd be fired. "Are you sleeping here at the company?" Jason paled. "Mr. Brian, Please don't fire me. I need this job." Brian smiled. "Relax, tell me your story." Jason had a story similar to Brian's. Sick mother, younger siblings, no money for transportation. "We'll fix this," Brian said, "but not by sleeping on the floor. We'll do it the right way." He activated the company's assistance program. Within a week, Jason had transportation aid and a small raise that allowed him to rent a room near work. "Why are you helping me?" Jason asked, emotional. "Because someone helped me once. And I hope when you can, you'll help someone too." The SAT branch under Brian's leadership became the most productive in the network. William was proud of his protege. "I always knew you were special, Brian. I learned from the best, Mr. William. I've told you to just call me William. We're partners now." Yes, William had made Brian a minority partner in the company, recognizing his hard work and dedication. But life still had challenges. Head. Michael, Brian's brother, now 15, started hanging with the wrong crowd. "Michael, we need to talk," Brian said, noticing the changes in his brother. "Talk about what? About how you're the family hero and I'm nothing?" Brian was shocked. "Where did that come from? Everyone only talks about you. Brian this, Brian that. What about me? I'm just Brian's brother." It was an issue Brian hadn't foreseen. Success also cast shadows on others. "Michael, you're so much more than my brother. You're your own person, with your own talents." "What talents? I'm not smart like you or Jess." Brian hugged his brother. "You know what I see in you? I see creativity. Someone who draws like no one else, who has amazing ideas. You just need direction." He enrolled Michael in a graphic design course. The boy flourished, finding his own identity. Daniel, the youngest, turned out to be a math genius. At 13, he was winning school competitions. "I want to be an engineer," he declared, "to build houses for those who don't have any." "That's my brother." Brian ruffled his hair. Jessica had started medical school, fulfilling her dream of helping people like their mother. "All thanks to you, bro," she said. "No, thanks to all of us. We're a family." 5 years had passed since that fateful day in the warehouse. The company had grown, the family had prospered, but Brian never forgot where he came from. In a board meeting, he proposed a bold project. "I want to create a vocational training center for underprivileged youth. Give them the opportunities many don't have." "It's a big investment," one of the directors pointed out. "It's an investment in the future," Brian argued. "How many talents have we lost due to lack of opportunity?" William immediately supported him. "Brian is right. Approved." The center opened 6 months later. On opening day, a surprise awaited Brian. Brian Taylor?" He turned and saw a familiar face. It was his cousin Nathan, whom he hadn't seen in years. "Nathan, what a surprise. I heard about the center in the papers. Had to see my famous cousin." They talked for a long time. Nathan shared that many in their old family spoke of Brian's success with pride. "We always knew you were special," Nathan said. "I'm not special, I just had opportunities." The center was a success. Hundreds of young people were trained and employed. Brian made sure to personally follow many cases. One day he arrived at his office and found an envelope on his desk. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Mr. Brian, my name is Samantha. 2 years ago you gave me a job when no one else would. I was a homeless, recovering drug addict. Today I'm a sales supervisor and support my daughter with dignity. Thank you for believing in me. Your faith saved my life." Brian was moved. He kept the letter alongside dozens of others he had received. Jennifer, now the HR manager, walked. "Did I start getting emotional again?" "How can I not, Jennifer? Every life changed is worth more than any profit. So that's why you're special, Brian. You never lost your humanity. But not everything was victories. The market was in crisis, and the company struggled. Cuts were necessary. We need to lay off at least 50 employees, the CFO said in a meeting. Brian objected. "There must be another way. These people have families." "It's the reality of the market, Brian," another director said. "Then let's change reality. I propose a temporary salary reduction for the board, including mine, to save jobs." The proposal sparked heated debate, but William intervened. "Brian is right. We lead by example." Approved. The move saved jobs and increased employee loyalty. When the crisis passed, the company emerged stronger. Richard, the former manager, reappeared. He was unrecognizable, worn down, aged. "Brian, I need to talk to you." "Richard, what are you doing here?" "I came to apologize and ask for help." Brian was surprised. Richard explained that after being fired, he had lost everything. His wife left him. Legal battles drained his savings and he couldn't find work. "I know I don't deserve it, but I'm desperate. I have a young son to support." Brian wrestled with himself. The man before him was the same one who had humiliated him for months. "Why should I help you, Richard?" "You shouldn't. But you're not like me, you're better." Brian took a deep breath. He remembered William's words about giving opportunities. "I can't give you a management position, but I can offer you a job in the warehouse. Do you accept?" With tears in his eyes, Richard accepted. He started at the bottom, but over time proved he had changed. He became one of the most dedicated employees. "Thank you for giving me a second chance," he told Brian months later. "Everyone deserves a second chance, Richard. I got mine." Time passed. Brian married Jennifer, who had always stood by him. They had 2 children, whom they taught the value of hard work and compassion. William, now elderly, called Brian for an important conversation. "I'm retiring, Brian. I want you to take over as the company's president." "William, it's a huge responsibility. A responsibility you've proven you deserve. The company needs someone with your vision." Brian accepted, moved. On the day of his inauguration, he gave an emotional speech. 15 years ago, I slept on the floor of a warehouse. Today, I lead this company. This was only possible because someone believed in me. I promise that under my leadership, we'll be more than a company. We'll be a family that cares for every member. The audience gave him a standing ovation. Among those present were Jason, now a manager, Samantha, sales director, Richard, logistics supervisor, and dozens of others whose lives had been transformed. Mrs. Barbara, now elderly but healthy, embraced her son. "Your father would be so proud." "He is, Mom. I feel his presence every day." Michael had become a renowned designer, creating the company's new visual identity. Daniel graduated as an engineer and led affordable housing projects. Jessica was a respected doctor, providing free care in underserved communities. "We made it, bro," Jessica said at a family dinner. "We got out of that hole." "We didn't do it alone," Brian corrected. "And that's why we need to reach out to others." Under Brian's leadership, the company became a benchmark for social responsibility. The training program expanded to other cities, transforming thousands of lives. One day, while visiting one of the new units, a young man approached him. "Mr. Brian, I'm Kevin. I wanted to thank you in person. 3 years ago, I was sleeping on the streets. Today, thanks to your program, I'm a computer technician supporting my family. I'm happy for you, Kevin. But the credit is yours. I just gave you the opportunity. You gave more than that. You gave hope." Stories like Kevin's multiplied. Brian kept a wall in his office with photos and letters from people the company had helped. William, though retired, visited regularly. "You've surpassed all my expectations, Brian. I had an excellent teacher. No, you had it in you. I just helped it flourish." But new challenges always arose. A multinational tried to buy the company, promising huge profits to shareholders. "It's an offer we can't refuse," argued one partner. "Unrefusable for whom?" Brian countered. "What about our employees, our social programs? Everything will be discontinued." The battle was tough. Brian had to convince each shareholder that the company's value went beyond finances. "We built more than a company. We built a legacy. We can't sell that." After months of tense negotiations, Brian succeeded. The company remained independent, keeping its values. 20 years after that morning in the warehouse, Brian received an unexpected honor. The city council named him an honorary citizen for his service to the community. At the ceremony, he spoke emotionally. "I accept this honor not in my name, but in the name of all who believe lives can be transformed through opportunity and dignified work. In the name of William Parker, who showed me the way. In the name of my family, who gave me strength. In the name of every person who went through our programs and now builds a better future." The packed audience applauded, moved. Among them were hundreds whose lives had been touched by the company. Richard, completely transformed, approached him afterward. "Brian, I need to say something. Those months when I humiliated you, it was the worst thing I've ever done, but paradoxically it changed everything. If I hadn't been so cruel, William would never have noticed you." "It doesn't justify it, Richard. I'm not justifying it. I'm saying you turned my cruelty into something good. That's greatness." Brian's children grew up learning these values. Emma, the eldest, interned at the company, starting at the bottom like her father. "Dad, why do I have to start in the warehouse? I'm your daughter." "Exactly because of that, Emma. You need to understand every role, respect every worker. One day all this will be yours to care for." Emma understood the lesson. She became beloved by all, working hard and respecting every colleague. Joshua, the youngest, chose a different path. He became a teacher. "I want to educate, Dad. Give children the tools to change their lives." "That's my boy," Brian hugged him proudly. Jennifer, now the company's vice president, was Brian's right hand. "Remember when we were just employees dreaming of better days?" she said one evening. "How could I forget? You've always been by my side, Jennifer. And I always will be. We've built something beautiful together." The company now had branches in several cities, always maintaining its philosophy of social responsibility. Each location had its training center and assistance program. William, at 90 years old, still sharp and active, called Brian for one last important conversation. "Brian, my time is coming to an end, but I leave in peace knowing my legacy is in good hands." "Don't talk like that, William. You have many years ahead." "Realism, my boy. But before I go, I want to see one thing. The opening of the hospital the company is building. It was the newest project. A hospital that would provide free care to those in need, specializing in kidney diseases, in honor of Mrs. Barbara. The opening was emotional. William cut the ribbon alongside Brian and Mrs. Barbara. "This hospital will save lives like mine was saved," Mrs. Barbara said at the microphone, "thanks to men like William Parker and my son Brian, who understand that success is only worthwhile when shared." 6 months later, William passed away peacefully in his sleep. His funeral was one of the largest the city had ever seen. Thousands paid tribute to the man who had changed so many lives. Brian spoke at the funeral. "William Parker taught me that true success isn't measured in numbers, but in lives transformed. He saw potential where others saw just a young man sleeping on the floor. I promise to honor his legacy every day." The reading of the will brought surprises. William left much of his personal fortune to expand the company's social programs, and he left a letter for Brian. "My dear Brian, if you're reading this, it means my journey has ended, but yours continues. Remember that frightened young man in the warehouse? Look how far you've come, not because of me, but because of your own strength. I merely opened the door. You built the path. Keep opening doors. The world needs more people like you. With paternal love, William." Brian framed the letter and hung it beside his diploma and other important mementos. The company kept growing, but always upheld its human values. It became a case study in universities, an example of how profit and social responsibility can go hand in hand. 30 years after that fateful morning, Brian, now with graying hair, walked through the same warehouse where it all began. He was accompanied by his 10-year-old granddaughter, Olivia. "Grandpa, is it true you used to sleep here?" "It's true, my dear. Right there in that corner. That must have been awful. It was hard. But it taught me the value of dignity, hard work, and above all, compassion. Is that why you help so many people?" "Exactly. When we have the chance to lend a hand, we should. One day you'll understand better." Just then, a new employee hurried by, knocking over some papers. Brian helped pick them up. "Thank you, Mr. Brian. Sorry for the trouble." "No problem, Kevin. How's your mother doing?" "Better, thanks to the treatment the company is covering." "I don't know how to thank you. Work hard, study, grow, and one day help others. That's the best thanks." After the employee left, Olivia asked, "Grandpa, do you know all the employees?" "I try to. Everyone has a story, a family, dreams. They're people, not numbers." They continued the tour of the company. Brian showed his granddaughter each department, sharing stories. "That's where your grandmother Jennifer worked when we first met. In that room, William offered me my first opportunity. And here," he stopped in front of a plaque, "is where it all began." The plaque read, "In this place compassion triumphed over cruelty. May it always be so." Why this plaque, Grandpa? To remind us that we always have a choice between cruelty and compassion, and that compassion is always worth it. Back in the office, Brian found his brothers waiting. It was the day of their monthly family meeting, a tradition they'd kept for years. "The building is ready," announced Daniel. 100 apartments for low-income families, fully equipped. "And the design turned out amazing," added Michael. "Dignified, beautiful, a place people will be proud to call home. The hospital has treated over 1,000 patients this month," Jessica chimed in. "We've saved so many lives, bro." Brian smiled. The family's legacy went beyond the business. "Dad would be proud," he said, moved. "And Mom is," said Barbara, entering the room at 80 years old, still active. "My children have become good people. That's all a mother could wish for." Dinner was lively, with grandchildren and great-grandchildren filling the table with joy. Brian watched it all with gratitude. Jennifer held his hand. "What are you thinking about?" "How life turns. Who would have thought that young man sleeping on the floor would build all this? It wasn't luck, Brian, it was character. William saw that in you, and I was lucky to have all of you by my side." After dinner, Brian stepped onto the terrace. The city stretched before him, full of lights and life. How many people down there were going through what he once had? How many young people were sleeping in warehouses, in degrading conditions, just needing a chance? Emma joined him. "Dad, I was thinking, what if we expanded the student housing program? Many kids from rural areas can't study because they have nowhere to live." Brian smiled. His daughter had the same spirit. "Great idea, draft the proposal." "Already did." She handed him a folder. "I learned from the best not to waste time when it comes to helping people." Brian flipped through the proposal, impressed. "Approved. Let's change more lives." The next day, Brian gave a talk at a university. The auditorium was packed with eager young faces. "Good morning, everyone. My name is Brian Taylor, and 40 years ago I was one of you, a young man full of dreams but with no opportunities. Today I'm here to tell you, don't give up. No matter how tough things get, dignity and hard work can transform lives." He shared his story, leaving out none of the hardships, sleeping on the floor, the humiliation, the hunger, the despair. But he also spoke of hope, of good people, of the importance of lending a hand. Each of you has the potential for greatness, not greatness measured in money, but in the positive impact you make on the world. Be the change you want to see. Questions poured in. One young man raised his hand. Mr. Taylor, what do you do when it feels like nothing will ever work out? When you just want to quit? Brian took a moment. Son, there were many nights on that warehouse floor when I wanted to give up. But I remembered my sick mother, my little brothers. Find your why. The reason you get up every day. And in the toughest moments, remember, it's temporary. With perseverance and faith, things get better. After the talk, many students approached him. Brian handed out cards. Send me your resumes. We always have openings for those who want to work and grow. On the way back, he stopped at a construction site, the newest training center, the 20th in their network. The lead engineer greeted him. Mr. Taylor, right on schedule. Opening next month as planned. Excellent. How many young people can we serve here? 500 per shift, 1,500 total with all 3 shifts. 1,500 futures transformed. Every penny invested is worth it. That evening at home, Brian received an unexpected visitor. It was Kevin, the young man he had met years before. Mr. Taylor, I'm sorry for coming unannounced, but I needed to tell you in person. I started my own tech company, and following your example, 30% of the jobs are for underprivileged youth we train for free. Brian was moved. Kevin, that's wonderful. This is how the cycle of goodness continues. It's the least I can do. You saved my life. Now I want to save others. After Kevin left, Jennifer remarked, Do you know what your greatest legacy is, Brian? Not the company, not the buildings. It's the people you've inspired to do good. Our legacy, Jennifer. None of this would have been possible alone. The phone rang. It was Emma, excited. Dad, we just got an offer. An international foundation wants to fund the expansion of our programs to other states. What wonderful news, sweetheart. There's more. They want you to lead the national project. Imagine, Dad, we can bring hope to the entire United States. Brian felt the weight and honor of the responsibility. Let's think it through, carefully. But if we can help more people, it's our duty to accept. That night, Brian had trouble sleeping, not from discomfort as in the past, but from the emotion of seeing how one life could impact so many others. He got up and went to his home office. On the wall, an old photo. Him, young and thin, standing beside William on the day he was promoted. Nearby, pictures of his family, employees, and graduates from their programs. He sat down to write in his journal, a habit he'd kept for decades. Today, once again, I saw the power of the chain of good. Kevin, whom we saved from the streets, he's now saving others. Emma wants to expand our work. William's legacy lives on and grows. Sometimes I wonder, what if William hadn't walked into that warehouse that morning? What if Richard had been less cruel? Would my life have taken a different path? But I've learned there's no use questioning the what-ifs. Life is made of meetings, partings, and choices. William chose to help me. I chose not to give up, and together we chose to make a difference. Tomorrow we start planning the national expansion, more training centers, more hospitals, more decent housing, more opportunities, more lives transformed. Dad, wherever you are, I hope I'm honoring your memory. I promise to take care of the family. I think I've gone beyond that. We've cared for many families. The cold warehouse floor is in the past. But the lessons I learned there stay with me every day. Humility, perseverance, compassion. Bring on the next challenges, we're ready. He closed the journal and returned to the bedroom. Jennifer slept peacefully. He kissed her forehead and lay beside her. Outside, the city slept. But somewhere, Brian knew, there was a young person struggling, needing an opportunity. And the next day, he and his team would work to help that person find it. The sun rose once more over the city. Brian woke early, as always. He had coffee with Jennifer, spoke to the kids on the phone, and hugged Mrs. Barbara. When he arrived at the company, everyone greeted him warmly. The doorman, the cleaning staff, the executives. They respected him not for his position, but for who he was. In the elevator, he remembered again that morning 40 years ago. The fear, the shame, the humiliation, and then the hope brought by a good man. The doors opened on his floor. His assistant waited with the day's schedule. Good morning, Mr. Taylor. Meeting with the foundation at 9, visit to the new center at 11. Lunch with the program graduates. Perfect, Christine. Let's get to another day of work. Before entering his office, he paused. He looked back at the hallway full of people working, building, dreaming. Thank you, William, he thought. Thank you for showing me there's always hope, and that one act of kindness can change the world. He stepped into the office, ready for another day. Another day to open doors, create opportunities, transform lives, because that was now his mission. That was his legacy, and he would fulfill it until his last day. The meeting with the foundation was a success. They approved the funding to expand the programs to 10 states. Mr. Taylor, your story and work are inspiring, said the representative. This is exactly the kind of initiative we want to support. I appreciate the trust. We guarantee every dollar will be well spent in transforming lives. After the meeting, Brian went to the new center with Emma. Together, they toured the facilities. Dad, look, state-of-the-art computer labs, science labs, even a childcare space for students' kids. Perfect, my dear. Education transforms. But we must remove every barrier. They found Jason, now the regional director of the centers, overseeing the final details. Brian, what an honor to have you here. The honor is mine, Jason. Seeing your growth fills me with pride. I learned from the best, and now I pass it on. We already have 500 enrolled for the first class. 500 new stories. Beginning. Wonderful. At lunch with the graduates, Brian heard dozens of moving stories. Mothers now able to support their children, young people off the streets, lives being rebuilt. An elderly woman approached. Mr. Taylor, I'm Mary. I'm 72 and just graduated with a degree in computer science. I thought it was too late, but you showed me it's never too late to learn. Mary, you're an inspiration. Proof that age is just a number when we have the will to grow. In the afternoon, Brian got a surprise. Richard asked to speak with him privately. Brian, I got an offer to manage a warehouse at another company. Pays much better, but before deciding, I wanted your opinion. Brian smiled. Richard, you rebuilt your life here. You've proven your worth. If you feel it's time for new challenges, go with my blessing. And know our doors will always be open to you. Richard was moved. You know, Brian, those months, when I treated you badly, still haunt me, but your ability to forgive taught me more than any punishment. The past is behind us, Richard. What matters is who we are today. The two embraced, sealing their reconciliation for good. At the end of the day, Brian chaired the board meeting. They discussed national expansion. We'll need local leaders committed to our philosophy, Jennifer reflected. I've already identified people, said Emma. Former students who excelled and want to give back. Perfect. The project grows from within with people who've lived the transformation. The meeting stretched late into the night, planning every detail. When it ended, Brian was exhausted but happy. In the parking lot, he ran into the night guard. Good evening, Mr. Taylor. Working late again? The mission never stops, Joshua. How's your daughter? Graduated as a nurse thanks to the company's scholarship. She's already working at the hospital. What wonderful news! Send her my congratulations. Driving home, he thought about how many lives were woven into this network of solidarity. When he arrived, his family was gathered watching TV. Dad! Olivia jumped into his lap. At school today, I talked about you. My teacher said you're a hero. I'm no hero, sweetheart. Just someone who got help and now helps others. But isn't that what a hero is? Brian laughed. Maybe you're right. Later, in their room, Jennifer massaged his tense shoulders. You need to slow down. You're not a young man anymore. As long as I have strength, I'll keep going. There's still so much to do. I know. Just promise to take care of your health, too. We need you for many more years. I promise, my love. That early morning, Brian woke up to the phone ringing. It was from the company hospital. Mr. Taylor, we have an emergency. A young man was brought in critical condition. A homeless person. He has no ID or family. What should we do? Treat him with everything you have. Save his life. Cost is not an issue. Yes, sir. Thank you. Brian couldn't fall back asleep. He thought about the unknown young man fighting for his life. How many others were in the same situation? In the morning, he went straight to the hospital. The young man had survived the surgery. He was lucky, the doctor said. A few more hours and we wouldn't have been able to save him. Brian entered the room. The boy, who couldn't have been more than 20, was asleep. Thin, worn, down with marks of a hard life on the streets. When he woke up, he was startled to see Brian there. "Easy, son, you're safe. What's your name?" "Tyler, sir. I'm sorry, I can't pay." "Don't worry about that. When you recover, we'll talk about your future. Do you have family?" Tyler shook his head, tears in his eyes. "Then you do now. Rest. I'll come back to see you." Leaving the room, Brian gave instructions for Tyler to receive all necessary care. Another life to transform. The following days were intense. The national project took shape. New centers were planned, partnerships formed. One morning, Brian received a call that moved him deeply. "Mr. Taylor, this is the State University. We'd like to award you an honorary doctorate for your contributions to society." Brian could barely speak. "It's an immense honor. I humbly accept." The news spread quickly. Congratulations poured in from everywhere. Mrs. Barbara cried when she heard, "My son, a doctor, your father would be so proud." "It's our title, Mum, the whole family's." The ceremony was scheduled for the next month. Brian insisted it be open to the public and that graduates from the centers be special guests. Tyler, now recovered, sought out Brian. "Mr. Taylor, I don't know how to thank you. You saved my life. Now it's your turn to do something. With it, Tyler. How about starting with school?" I don't know if I can. I dropped out in 5th grade. Everyone can learn. We'll start with the basics. The important thing is wanting to." He enrolled Tyler in the literacy program. The young man dedicated himself fiercely, determined to make the most of the opportunity. The national expansion began. Brian traveled often, personally overseeing each new center. On one trip to rural Pennsylvania, he was moved by the welcome. "Mr. Taylor, welcome," the mayor greeted him. "Your arrival brings hope to our youth." The center was set up in partnership with the city. At the inauguration, hundreds attended. A mother approached with her teenage son. "Dr. Taylor, this is my son, Joshua Ryan. He really wants to study technology, but we couldn't afford it. Now with the center here, Joshua Ryan will have every opportunity to pursue his dream, Mom. We guarantee it." The boy, shy, thanked with shining eyes. Back in New York City, Brian found a pleasant surprise. Former students of the programs had organized and created an alumni association to help newcomers. "It's our way of giving back," explained Samantha, now the association's president. "Mentorship, support, networking, creating a real network of solidarity." "This is beautiful, Samantha. The circle is complete." The honorary doctorate ceremony arrived. The university auditorium was packed. Brian insisted his whole family join him on stage. In his speech, he moved everyone. "This title isn't mine, it's William Parker's, who showed me the way. My mother's, who taught me dignity in poverty. My wife's, my partner through it all. My brother's, my strength. From my children, my future. And from every person who transformed their life through work and education. I receive this honor in the name of all who believe it's possible to build a fairer country, one opportunity at a time." The ovation was long and heartfelt. In the faces of the audience, Brian saw the hope that William had seen in him decades earlier. After the ceremony, an elderly gentleman approached him. "Dr. Brian, I'm a retired teacher. I've followed your work for years. I'd like to volunteer at the centers teaching English and math. Would that be possible?" "It would be an honor to have you with us, Professor. Experience and wisdom are always welcome." More and more people offered to help. The movement grew organically, people helping people. Joshua, Brian's son, announced at a family meeting, "Dad, Mum, I've decided to create a volunteer teacher program for the centers. Recruit retired educators, college students, anyone who wants to teach. That's the best legacy I could leave," said Jennifer. "Children who carry on the mission." The volunteer teacher program was a success. In 6 months, over 1,000 volunteers signed up. Brian regularly visited all the centers. At one in Los Angeles, he got a surprise. "Mr. Brian, remember me?" It was Kevin, the first young man he'd helped years ago. "Kevin, of course, I remember. What are you doing here? I came to personally deliver the computers my company is donating. 500 brand new machines. Kevin, that's wonderful. I learned from you. When we can help, we should help. Donations multiplied. Business owners inspired by his example contributed equipment, scholarships, resources. Tyler, the young man Brian had saved, approached him during a visit to the New York City Center. Dr. Brian, I did it. I passed my equivalency exam. Now I can go to trade school. Congratulations, Tyler. I knew you could do it. And there's more. I met a girl in class, Rachel. She's had a tough life too. We're supporting each other. That's beautiful, son. Mutual support is everything. Christmas was approaching. Brian organized a big gathering, bringing together staff, students, alumni, and volunteers. The hall was simply but lovingly decorated. The food, prepared by students from the culinary program. Brian moved between tables, talking to everyone. In each story, he saw his own struggles multiplied. Jennifer raised a toast. To all who turned hardships into opportunities. Who believed when the world doubted. Who reached out when they could have turned away. Health and prosperity. The toast was followed by deep emotion. People hugged, thanked each other, celebrated achievements. Richard, about to start his new job, approached. Brian, before I go, I wanted to say, you taught me it's never too late to change. I'll carry that lesson forever. Go in peace, Richard, and remember, our doors will always be open. The year ended with impressive numbers. 50 centers operating, 100,000 people trained, 80% employment rate among graduates. But to Brian, the numbers were secondary. What mattered were the lives behind them. On New Year's Eve, gathered with family, he reflected. When I think of all that's happened, it feels like a dream. A dream you turned into reality, said Mrs. Barbara, with hard work, faith and kindness. And it continues, added Emma. Next year we'll double the number of centers. Olivia, now a teenager, announced, Grandpa, I've decided what I want to be, a social worker. I want to help people like you do. Brian hugged his granddaughter, moved. The legacy would live on for generations. Fireworks lit up the sky. Each burst of light seemed to celebrate a life changed, a hope renewed. Jennifer held his hand. Happy New Year, my love. May more achievements come. May more opportunities to do good come, Brian corrected. The new year began with intensity. The national expansion was accelerating. New challenges were emerging, but so were new joys. One February morning, Brian received a letter that moved him deeply. Dr. Brian, my name is Hope. Ironic, isn't it? Because I had lost all hope. I lived on the streets, addicted, abandoned. Until I joined your program. Today I'm a chef, I have my own restaurant, and I employ other women in vulnerable situations. You didn't just give me a profession, you gave me back my dignity, my life, my hope. My restaurant is called Second Chances. In your honor and in honor of everyone who believes in fresh starts. Forever grateful, Hope. Brian framed the letter, another addition to his collection of everyday miracles. The morning meeting was about a new project, affordable housing for low-income seniors. Many of our students care for elderly parents, explained Jennifer. We need to think of them too. Approved, Brian said without hesitation. Taking care of those who took care of us is a sacred duty. The project took shape quickly. The first residence would be built on land donated by a businessman, moved by Brian's story. Joshua Ryan, the shy boy from Pennsylvania, showed up for a visit. Now a young man, graduated in technology. Dr. Brian, I came to thank you in person. I got a job at a major software company. Joshua Ryan, what joy, I knew you could do it. And I came back to volunteer at the center, to teach what I've learned. That's the spirit. The cycle of good must never stop. Success stories multiplied exponentially. Every graduate was a seed that sprouted and bore new fruit. In March, tragedy tested the organization. A fire struck, one of the centers destroying equipment and the structure. Brian went immediately to the scene. He found students and staff heartbroken. We lost everything, Dr. Brian, sobbed the coordinator. We didn't lose the most important thing, the people. Buildings can be rebuilt, and we'll rebuild even better. The response was remarkable. Companies donated materials, volunteers worked on reconstruction, and other centers took in displaced students. In 2 months, the center reopened, bigger and more modern. Sometimes, Brian said at the reopening, from the ashes rise the greatest opportunities. This center is proof of that. Tyler and Rachel appeared with news. Doctor, Brian, we're getting married. And there's more, Rachel is pregnant. Brian hugged the couple. What a blessing, life renewing itself. We want you to be our best man, Tyler asked. It would be an immense honor. The wedding was simple, but emotional, held in the hall of one of the centers, with the whole community present. In his speech, Brian moved the couple to tears. You are living proof that love and hope overcome any adversity. May you build a beautiful family and teach your children the value of perseverance. The expansion reached the Amazon. The challenge was adapting the programs to the local reality. Brian went personally to see the region. He was struck by the hardships, but also by the resilience of the people. Here, the center needs to be different, he concluded. Beyond urban training, we must think of sustainable activities tied to the forest. They created courses in ecotourism, sustainable management and crafts using local materials. The Amazon Center became a model of regional adaptation. Back in New York City, Brian found William Jr., his mentor's son, waiting for him. Uncle Brian, I came to give you something Dad left for you. It was a sealed envelope with instructions to be opened only 10 years after William's death. Brian opened it with trembling hands. Inside were a letter and documents. My dear Brian, if you're reading this, it means our project has grown beyond my wildest dreams. I leave to you and our cause 50% of my personal shares in other companies. Use the dividends to expand our work even further. I trust you to keep transforming lives. With eternal love, William. The amount was astronomical. It would allow for the creation of a perpetual foundation to sustain the projects. Your father. Brian couldn't speak. He always said you were like a son to him, said William Jr., and that the legacy was in good hands. The creation of the William Parker Foundation was announced. It would ensure the permanence of the programs, regardless of any crisis. Emma took over as the foundation's executive director. Dad, we're going to make it even more professional. Create metrics, expand international partnerships without losing our essence. I trust you, my daughter, the new generation bringing innovation. The program reached 100 centers, a historic milestone. The celebration was simultaneous across all locations, connected by video conference. Brian spoke from New York City to thousands of people across the United States. Each center is a beacon of hope. Every student, proof that the United States can change. Keep believing, working, transforming. Together we are unstoppable. Emotions ran high as students from each center shared their stories. There were hundreds, thousands of Brians overcoming adversity. Hope, the chef, appeared during a visit. Dr. Brian, I opened my second restaurant, and I started a program. Every Monday we serve free meals to the homeless. Hope, you've understood it all. You received help and multiplied it. I learned from the best example. The social impact of the programs began to be studied by universities. Theses were written. The Brian Taylor model became an international case study. An American university invited Brian to give a lecture. He accepted, bringing Emma and some former students along. In the packed auditorium at Harvard, Brian began, "Good evening. I'm here to share not a theory, but a practice. How love and opportunity can transform lives and societies." The lecture was a success. Partnership proposals emerged, but Brian was selective. I accept help, not interference. Our model is American, adapted to our reality. Back in the United States, another surprise. The federal government wanted to adopt the model nationwide. It would be a dream, Brian said in a meeting. But keep the essence, people helping people, without excessive bureaucracy. The negotiations were long but fruitful. The program would expand with federal support, maintaining decentralized management. Joshua Ryan reappeared, now as an entrepreneur. Dr. Brian, I started my own company. Hand 20% of the profits go to scholarships at the centers. Joshua, you've exceeded all expectations. You planted the seed, I just watered it. Tyler and Rachel had their baby. They named him William Bryan in honor of the two men who changed their lives. Dr. Bryan, hold your godson. Bryan cradled the baby, moved. May he grow up in a better world we're building. The program celebrated 20 years. The festivities were grand, but Bryan preferred to spend the day visiting centers, talking to students. At one, he encountered a scene that took him back in Nomito's time, a young man mopping the floor at dawn. Good morning. Why so early? Sorry, sir, I live far away and walk here. I arrive early and help clean in exchange for more study time. Bryan saw himself in that young man. What's your name? Gabriel, sir. Gabriel, starting tomorrow you'll have a transportation pass. And you don't need to clean to study. Education is a right, not a favor. But, sir, just promise to work hard and one day help others like you. I promise. Bryan left renewed. 20 years later, history repeated itself, but now with a guaranteed happy ending. Mrs. Barbara, at 90 years old, still sharp, actively participated in the projects. Mom, you should rest, said Jessica. Rest? As long as there are young people in need, I'll be here. The matriarch's determination inspired everyone. She coordinated the Volunteer Grandmothers program, where elderly women provided emotional support to students. Bryan was surprised with a national tribute. Would it be a street name, a school? No, Emma revealed. The people decided on something better. It was a documentary, collectively produced by former students, telling the story from the beginning. The premiere was emotional. The theater was packed. Bryan watched his life on the screen, narrated by dozens of people he had helped. At the end, a standing ovation. Bryan took the stage. This film isn't about me, it's about all of us, about what we can do when we choose love over hate, compassion over indifference. The documentary traveled across the country, inspiring new initiatives. Copies were sent to schools, universities, and businesses. Gabriel, the young man Bryan had found cleaning, graduated with honors. Dr. Bryan, I did it, and I already have a job. I knew you would, Gabriel. What's next? Night college and volunteering on weekends. A promise is a promise. That's the spirit. The solidarity network they created was now self-sustaining. Successful former students funded new ones, and the virtuous cycle never stopped. At a board meeting, Emma presented impressive numbers. 1 million people directly impacted, 3 million indirectly, 200 centers, 85% employment rate. Beautiful numbers, Bryan said. But remember, each number is a person, a story, a family. The phone rang. It was Hope. Dr. Bryan, I won the Best Chef Award, and I announced half the prize will go toward creating a free culinary school. Hope, you moved me. Well deserved. Success. The good news kept coming. Joshua opened technology centers. Tyler started cooperatives. Gabriel launched an after-school tutoring project. Jennifer, watching her husband work tirelessly, remarked, "We've created an army of goodness." We didn't. We just gave everyone the tools to discover the key goodness within themselves. Christmas came again. The gathering now needed a stadium to fit everyone. Bryan looked at the crowd. Familiar faces, intertwined stories, transformed lives. Olivia, now a social work graduate, took the stage. I'd like to toast my grandfather, who taught me that true success is measured in smiles you create. The toast moved Bryan. This is my greatest achievement, he whispered to Jennifer, seeing the legacy continue. The new year brought a diagnosis. Bryan had cancer. The news shook everyone, but he remained calm. We'll fight, and as long as I have strength, I'll keep working. The treatment was tough, but Bryan didn't stop. Between chemotherapy sessions, he visited centers, guided projects. The outpouring of support was touching. Messages came from across the country. Prayer vigils were organized. See, Jennifer said, the love you planted comes back multiplied. Bryan responded to treatment. In 6 months, he was in remission. I've been given extra time, he said. Let's use it well. He accelerated succession plans. Emma would take over the company, Joshua the educational programs, Olivia the social work. You're ready. I'll be here to advise, but the future is yours. A young man approached Bryan. He was Richard's son. Mr. Bryan, my father passed away. But before he did, he asked me to give you this. It was a letter from Richard. Bryan, if my son is here, it means I'm gone. But I couldn't leave without thanking you. You taught me it's never too late to change. My son is a good man because of the example you gave me. Thank you for forgiving me. Thank you for giving me a second chance. Until forever, Richard. Bryan cried. Until the end, lives kept transforming. The program celebrated 25 years. The celebrations were nationwide. Bryan, now elderly but still active, gave a speech. 25 years ago, it was just one man sleeping on the ground and another extending a hand. Today, we are millions. We've proven that the United States has a way, that our people are capable of greatness when given opportunities. Keep going, the work never ends. After the speech, Bryan felt unwell. He was hospitalized. The doctors were clear. The cancer had returned, aggressive. The family gathered. Bryan remained at peace. I've lived more than I deserved. I've seen more than I dreamed. I leave in peace. The last weeks were for goodbyes. People came from all over the country to give thanks. Gabriel brought his son. Dr. Bryan, this is Gabriel Bryan. I named him in your honor. May he be a light, as you were, Gabriel. Hope arrived with a group of chefs. All former homeless, Dr. Bryan, all transformed by your kindness. You transformed yourselves, I merely showed the way. Tyler and Rachel brought William Bryan, now a teenager. Godfather, he wants to be a doctor, to care for people as you cared for us. How proud I am. Take good care of people, William. That's all that matters. Joshua Ryan, now a successful businessman. Dr. Bryan, my company employs 500 people, all guided by the philosophy I learned from you. Keep it up, Joshua. Goodness multiplies. Jennifer never left his side. 50 years together, a life of love and purpose. No regrets? She asked. None. I'd do it all again, exactly the same. Emma, Joshua, and Olivia took turns caring for him. You are my pride, said Bryan. Continue the mission, expand, innovate, but never forget people first. Mrs. Barbara, at 95, held her son's hand. You kept your promise, my son. You took care of all of us. I learned from you. Mother, strength in adversity. William Jr. visited. Uncle Bryan, Dad must be preparing your welcome in heaven. I can't wait to thank him again. Bryan's last words were for Jennifer. Thank you for standing by me, for believing, for building together. I love you. Bryan passed peacefully, surrounded by love. The news moved the nation. The wake was held in the city center, open to all. The line to say goodbye lasted 3 days. Thousands of people, each with a story of transformation. The funeral was broadcast nationwide. Emma spoke. My father left us a legacy, the certainty that an act of kindness can change the world. He proved it. Now it's our turn to keep proving it. Jennifer, strong despite her grief, added, Bryan always said, don't cry for me, keep working. So dry your tears and get to work. There are many lives waiting for transformation. A year later, they inaugurated the Bryan Taylor Memorial. Not a statue, but a training center for social leaders. Emma led the ceremony. Dad would have hated a statue, but he'd loved knowing his name shapes new life changers. The work continued, expanded, evolved. New technologies, updated methods, but always the same essence, people helping people. Olivia created the Heirs of Goodness program, identifying young people with social leadership potential. Joshua expanded internationally, taking the American model to African and Latin countries. Jennifer, at 85, still active, oversaw everything. Bryan would be proud. The dream didn't die with him. 20 years after Bryan's passing, the program reached 10 million people. William Bryan, the godson, now a doctor, led the health programs. Godfather always said, goodness multiplies. He was right. Gabriel became Secretary of Education, implementing the principles he'd learned nationwide. Everything I am, I owe to Dr. Bryan. Now I give back to the country. Hope created an international network of training restaurants. Each restaurant trains 50 people a year. It's my way of honoring his legacy. On Bryan's 100th birthday, the United States paused to honor him. But the greatest tribute was the millions of lives transformed. Emma, now elderly, spoke. Dad started sleeping on the floor. He ended up lifting millions. He proved there's no hopeless situation when there's love and opportunity. Let's continue, and they did. Because goodness once planted with love never stops growing. Brian Taylor, the man who slept on the floor and built stairways for millions to climb, remains alive in every transformed life, in every outstretched hand, in every second chance offered. His legacy isn't in buildings or numbers, but in hopeful smiles, grateful tears, rebuilt families, and dreams fulfilled. In the warehouse where it all began, now stands the largest training center in the network. A modest plaque marks the exact spot where Brian once slept. Here, humiliation turned into humanity. May it inspire forever. And it does. Every day, young people pass by and learn his story. They leave determined to change their own lives and others. Because that's Brian Taylor's greatest lesson. It doesn't matter where you sleep tonight, but how many people you'll help have a decent bed tomorrow. The cycle of goodness never ends. For every person helped, a new helper is born. For every life saved, 1,000 others are rescued. William saw it clearly that morning. There was greatness in that young man on the floor. Greatness that multiplied infinitely. And somewhere right now, someone is reaching out to another who's fallen, and the miracle repeats itself, because true love is eternal and contagious. This is Brian Taylor's story, but it's also the story of all of us, because we all can choose to step over or help lift up. Brian chose, William chose, millions have chosen, and you, what will you choose? End of story. Dear listener, tell us your thoughts about this moving journey of overcoming. Do you know someone like Brian or William? Leave your like, subscribe, and share to inspire more people.